In this, got it. In this presentation, we're going to briefly look at the skills that are needed for children to become confident readers and writers, with the understanding that this really starts in infancy. And so we will start with those beginning stages, and build up through the 4 and 5-year-olds that we also have here.
All right, so Susan gave us a nice introduction, but we'll introduce ourselves again. My name is Sarah Beckley. I am a teacher in the Early Childhood Universal Pre-K program. I've been at Twin Parks since 2006, and I have my master's from NYU in educational theater, and also my master's in early childhood, birth to 2nd grade, and my Montessori certification for 3 to 6. I also have 2 lovely children that you'll see there on the screen. That's my son, Liam. He's a graduate of Twin Parks. He's in 3rd grade now. And my daughter, Vivian, is in our pre-K program right now.
Excellent. So my name is Jenna Dabney. I also have been at Twin Parks since 2006. First as a toddler teacher, mostly focusing with our twos. I have my Montessori certification at the infant toddler level. I'm currently in a pre-K classroom as well. What else do I have? I have 2 master's degrees from Bank Street, one in early childhood general education and one in school leadership. And I also have 2, I think, pretty cute kids. One is currently happens to be in Sarah's classroom, Benjamin, and my daughter Abigail is in our infant room. I would say all 4 of our children all started in our infant room, and so have been all the way up the ranks at Riverside.
Right, and we bring up that we are teachers, we are also parents.
Yeah.
So we've seen this
True
whole
story.
evolution from birth to 5 years old and beyond, and can say that the Montessori method really works, and we're going to talk about that today. All right, so our age group at Twin Parks, birth to 5 years old, may not be reading in a traditional sense by the end of our program, but they will, I guarantee, have a solid foundation of early literacy skills. Children at this age are in what we call a sensitive period, or a period of rapid growth, where a child is able to absorb a lot of new information. As teachers, we provide experiences, activities, and the groundwork for traditional reading and writing and language that comes beyond our program. During our talk today, we'd like to talk to you about expressive language in infants and toddlers. We'd like to talk about expressive language in early childhood, which is a lot about questioning and getting more language out of your children. The 6 essential pre-reading skills that every child needs and how they develop birth to 5 years old, and also the evolution of writing, which is a personal favorite of mine. So we're going to talk about all of those skills today.
So we'll start, in infancy, where life starts. So basically, what is expressive language? It is exactly what it says it is. It is how we use language to express ourselves, both our needs, our wants, just having conversation. But it's specifically the use of language. Ways that our teachers and ways that we hope our parents, we encourage our parents to support expressive language with our youngest children, is a lot of talking. I tell parents our infant teachers are often the most exhausted at the end of the day, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're picking children up all day long. Whereas in a pre-K room, I'm not picking up 4-year-olds, but they are constantly picking up. But they're tired because they talk more than any other teacher. They are frequently narrating their day, right? Oh, I'm going to pick you up now. We're going to go and change your diaper. Come, I'm going to pull your pants down. Every step they do, they narrate to the children. This comforts them, but it just exposes children to such a wide variety of language in a very natural way. Other things you can do with infants, to copy your baby's sound, right? Wait until they're done making a noise and then make the same sound back to them. It helps children understand the concept of taking turns in a conversation, but it also really validates them as communicating humans, right? When you make the same sound as someone else, you're repeating back what you've heard. We do that, when you fast forward to adulthood, that's like active listening, right? It's the same concept with infants. Sing songs, make up silly words, read books. All of these things are very, I think, sort of common knowledge. The two I really wanted to sort of draw attention to are, as children are older and start to talk more, being cautious not to make corrections in their speech patterns, right? If a child says, I go to school yesterday, instead of saying, Sarah, you said that wrong, next time, just say, yes, you went to school, right? Being very subtle and calm about it, and not drawing attention to it. If we do that too much, it will often result in children not speaking as much, which is the opposite of what we want to do. And the other is just to include your infant in a conversation. If you and your partner or you and a friend are having a cup of coffee and you're talking, every once in a while, just turning over and saying, oh, and Abigail, what do you think happened? What do you think about that? And just making sure that they are part of the process as well.
All right. And all of that builds to the preschool age children that we have in my classroom, Jenna's classroom, the 3s, 4s, 5s. At this age, children's vocabulary is rapidly growing. They're asking lots of questions. They're stating their preferences, making requests, and they're able to describe events in more detail. They've moved beyond sort of expressing their basic needs and wants and are developing a point of view and are able to argue that point of view. And parents of preschoolers know that arguing their point of view is something that they like to do a lot, but really they're just learning how to negotiate and how to, have conversations. All these skills, will translate to their ability to communicate with others. So how do we nurture and develop expressive language in our older children? It's through asking lots of questions and asking good questions. So something that I've learned along the way, when I started as a teacher, I, didn't know these things. I started as a parent, I didn't know these things, but this will really help when you're trying to get your children to talk more. I know a lot of us, when they get home at the end of the day, are like, what did you do today? And they say, oh, nothing. So hopefully we can give you some tips about how to ask them more open-ended questions to get more out of your conversations with your children. Jen and I actually were speaking about this. We think we could do a whole workshop about this. But let's first talk about what a closed question is. So a closed question is a yes, no, or set answer. And really what it does is it stops the flow of conversation between you and your child or whoever you're speaking to you. So that might be like, oh, what color are you using? Or do you like ice cream? Do you like this? There's really a yes, a no. Oh, I like pink. Open-ended questions, on the other hand, encourage your child to think deeper and reflect a little bit more. You might say, oh, you chose red. Why did you choose that color? And then you can ask more questions on top of that. Or why is ice cream your favorite treat? Oh, can you tell me how it tastes? Tell me more. Like, where have you had ice cream before? There's lots of things you can talk about with your child. So something we like to do in the classroom and something that you can definitely do at home is talk about books. Books are very easy to talk about. Pictures are very easy to talk about. There's a lot in there and there's not a lot of pressure. So Jenna and I are going to act out sort of what a conversation in our classroom might be when we're reading a new book. All right, so I'm going to bring my book. You can see it here on the screen here. I say, okay, friends, today we're going to read a new book. Let's look at the cover. What do you think this book is about?
A boat.
A boat. I see a boat too. Where do you think that boat is?
In the ocean.
In the ocean. What about this picture tells you that it might be in the ocean?
The bumpies, the waves.
The waves. Yeah, I see waves too. All right. Well, what else do we see in the picture?
A cow.
A cow. That cow looks a little silly. What's that cow doing?
Sitting in the boat.
Why do you think the cow is sitting up?
It's going somewhere.
Going somewhere. That's really interesting. Is there anything else that we notice on the cover of this book?
The horse.
There's a horse. There's a horse and a cow in the boat and maybe the ocean.
Maybe the ocean.
Right. That's a lot of information you could tell from that picture. All right. So we're going to read our story. The name of our story is Who Sunk the Boat? All right. So, you just get the children thinking without the pressure of, what's right or wrong or the title and leading them to what it might be about. This book in particular is really good. You can see on the bottom, it's a little grainy, but it's full of pictures and less text. So you can just go through and pick any page and say, oh, wow, I see that only the cow is in the book later. I wonder what happened to the horse. So you can do, we call it as teachers, a picture walk, but it's really just kind of going through and seeing each page and what the content might be and having a conversation about it. You can also do this with family photos. We do that a lot too. All right.
I will add here, this doesn't have to be done with children who are verbal, right? This can also be done with our infants. As with most things in life, but specifically with language, we have to model what we want our children to do before we can expect them to do it. So if we're sitting with an infant, I might use this very same book with my daughter who's 7 months old, and just sit, she sits on my lap. She doesn't have the attention span for a full book, but so maybe we walk through 3 or 4 pictures and I just say, oh, look, I see a cow and a horse and they're sitting in a row. This is a great opportunity to introduce the concept of a rowboat, right? Or that's just the vocabulary. They're sitting in a boat and they're rowing in the water. Oh, look, well, I can't, the horse fell over the boat. He splashed in the water, right? And be really animated. You don't have to quote unquote read the book. You can talk through the pictures, even with an infant. Here. This also will lead, I'll take a quick little tangent. I told Sarah I was going to take about having conversations with your children. At the end of the day, we often want to engage our children in, just retelling about their day. What did you do in school today? Right? It's probably a question we've all asked our children at some point. I was telling Sarah, ever since Benjamin was probably 4 or 5 months old when he started, as soon as I picked him up, I asked him sort of the same routine of questions, right? Did you have fun today? Were you kind? Was anyone helpful to you? Those are my values. That's what I thought was important. And it's to the point now that at almost 4, I pick him up, he says, I had fun and I was kind to Sarah and Anne helped me do this. And he just sort of gives it naturally. During the pandemic, we moved in with my parents and I want, at dinner, I want to be able to have a conversation at dinner. And so he would sit next to me and I would whisper to him, ask Grandma how your day was. And he couldn't speak. He wasn't, he was just about 1. And I would say, Grandma, Benjamin wants to know how your day was today, or what did you do today? And then spontaneously, I would say about 6 months later, we're sitting there at dinner and we're all talking and he just says, Mama, do day. And he started to ask her, and now it's just, hey, Grandma, today I did this. What did you do? But because he heard all of us always talking about our day, we modeled how we did it. It was, hey, let's tell you what we did. And we included him in it, that it has become very natural for him.
Right. So we've kind of, wrong way. Sorry. Okay, so we've sort of touched on it a bit, but there's a lot of benefits to open-ended questions. It helps you to critical thinking. Since there's no right or wrong answer, it gives your child an opportunity to think through many different possibilities and angles and to sort of solve problems on their own, which is ideally what we want them to be doing as they get older. It really encourages their creative thinking. They have the freedom to think beyond the obvious and tap into their imagination. And we also have confidence. Open-ended questions empower children to express themselves, which builds confidence and sharing thoughts and ideas with others. And at the bottom, we just have a couple questions that to get your child thinking, like, oh, maybe they're building, what's your plan? How do you think this thing works? I wonder what happens next. That's one of my favorites. I wonder what happens next. I wonder what will happen if we do this. What does this remind you of? These are questions. Obviously, too many questions can be overkill. Pick 1 or 2 for conversation, but you really will notice that you get to know your child better when you hear their point of view. All right, this is me.
Um,
Oh, no, this is.
This is just,
Ooh.
this is just
This
a
is one
lovely
of us.
quote.
Yeah, this is a nice quote from Maria Montessori. Like, how can anyone paint who cannot grade colors? How can anyone write poetry who has not learned to hear or see? Oh, why is it not going forward? I'm so sorry.
All good. All right, so here, these are six stages, the things that you need to have, in order to, oh my God.
Pre-reading
I
skills.
was like, my brain, sorry, friend,
Yeah.
my brain just went blank on that one.
Yeah,
Anyway.
these are 6 pre-reading skills that your children will be working on through kindergarten, first grade, but they really start in infancy. So we're going to touch on them briefly and how they apply to what we do in our classroom.
Thank you. Good
That's
save.
fine.
Teamwork. Anyway, so the first one is print motivation. Children need to be exposed to print in order to be interested in it. And a wide variety. You see, there's an infant on the top reading books, looking at pictures. Pictures are literacy. They can talk about, children can talk about what they see. This is all part of it. But also exposing children to newspapers, magazines, catalogs, anything that has print, and just making sure that children have an opportunity to touch or to see, and to see you using them as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The next is print awareness, and that's just the understanding that those little squiggles and symbols on the pages have meaning. And a few things you can do as parents that are very easy when they're very young, pointing out signs and symbols. Oh, look, it's the subway station, or that's the deli, or that says CVS, or Target, just like the symbol. It's really great. I know in this day and age, we all use computers to do a lot of our writing, but just to model writing lists, writing birthday cards, things like that, just to know that, oh, wow, like what I'm putting on the page is information for other people to take in. And another one is encouraging your children to read familiar books from memory. My daughter's favorite book right now is A Monster at the End of This Book. And she'll say, I can read this, Mom. And she'll bring it and she'll read all of, read all of the words she's for. And she's expressive and she enjoys it. And I don't correct her. I just say, wow, that's amazing. Like you
Thanks
are
for reading
reading.
to
That
me.
is a way to read. So
Then we have phonological awareness. This is an auditory skill. This is a child's ability to hear the different sounds in words. And so in our infant room, in our toddler room, we spend a lot of time with the rhyming, and this is where you can be really silly and make up silly words, right? If you say, do you know something that rhymes with cat, and they come up with, a word that's not an actual word, but it does rhyme, celebrate it, right? It's okay. What else? We have syllables, right? Let's clap out how many syllables in your name? Is that the same as, how many syllables in the word dinosaur? How many syllables in the word button? And just coming up, and these are things that you can just sort of do on your walk to school. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, I see a dog. How many syllables in the word dog? We're taking the subway. How many syllables in subway? And just helping children to draw attention to those beginning skills.
All right, the next one we really touched on with our questioning activity, but I'll say it quickly, is narrative skills. And that's just the ability to describe and retell familiar stories from books or from your personal life. Again, asking open-ended questions. Something I love is wordless books. So I put one that I really love on the top. It's called Zoom, and it basically starts from really far out and goes in, and then into the world of the story. And those just, again, take the pressure off of what's actually what the words are. When you have an older kid, if you have a 4 or 5-year-old, they might say, does that say the, Mom? Does that say dog? And you'll be like, actually it says dad, or whatever. But it takes that pressure off when you have just a wordless book. They can use their imagination and they can change it every time. Another great skill is to retell something using your own words. I took this picture on the left just the other day in my classroom, and one of our friends was taking out a book actually written in Chinese by one of our teachers. It's a Pete the Cat book though. So she was reading the pictures to a friend of hers. and they both speak Spanish. So she was reading it, speaking in Spanish, reading a Chinese book, but it was a familiar story to them, and I thought that was lovely.
That's awesome. Vocabulary. We have to help children build the vocabulary. So I think critical thing that we do as Montessori teachers is we give children real words, right? We don't, while our infant teachers absolutely, babble and repeat infant sounds, they also give children actual language and real words for things. And so you will not hear a Montessori teacher say, "Oh, look at that cute little piggy. Look at that cute little doggy." That is a dog, or look, this dog is called a Dalmatian, right? Giving the real words, giving clear language to children. And one great way to do this is to, again, you don't need a lot of written language, but what are the word? Picture dictionaries, right? They have a lot of things, but exposing children to a wide variety of text, not just the medium, but reading poems, reading fairy tales, reading stories, but also making sure that you include nonfiction.
All right. And then we're finally getting to letter knowledge. You notice how long we talked before we actually talked about letters. It's because all of those things that we've talked about so far are so critical to their language development and their literacy, that when they get to letters, often this is an easier task. So letters are symbols, and until meaning is attached to that symbol, in this case, a letter sound, it just remains a visual identification activity. So I have a lot of families who may come into my classroom and say, "My children know all their letters." And I'm like, "That's amazing." And they're like, "So they're probably ready to read, right?" And I'm like, let's see, and a lot of times they've memorized the symbols and the shapes, which is so important. But until you put some meaning to it, which is the sounds, they will not be, reading or decoding yet. Montessori created a multisensory approach to learning letters. And I think on the next one here. Yeah. These are the two main ones that we use in our early childhood classrooms. These are the two that she developed. First is called the sandpaper letters. It's on the left. And it is the lowercase letter. In Montessori, we teach the lowercase letters first. And that's mainly because it is in language way more often. You look at, a piece of writing, it's almost all in lowercase. And a lot of them are also kind of flowy letters. So they're easier sort of for children to write. So with the sandpaper letters, they aren't just looking at it and saying this is an A, they're tracing, you can see Cole there, tracing the T with his hands, feeling it, seeing it. And at the same time, we're saying, this says T, this says T. And they might say it's a T. We say its name is T, its sound is T. When we teach, if you're doing it at home, we teach the phonetic sounds first. So we'll treat like G, or, instead of H, we might say H. Or we also teach the short vowel sounds. So if you are, working with your friends, your children at home, that's what we do as well. The second is called the movable alphabet. And I will talk about writing in a minute, but the movable alphabet allows children who might not have the motor skills of a pencil yet to still be able to express themselves through writing. So again, we usually will start with the sandpaper letters, then we'll go to initial sounds of words, ending sounds of words, and then sort of fill in the middle and the blends. If you're one of our typically older children, you may get to that point. We can also use a movable alphabet with younger children. We'll match letters, we'll work on word families. You can see these girls are working on word families, the op family. So words that have one beginning and the same end. And I think that is all on that. This is, we're going to talk about writing. Do you read this one?
Sure. Whoops. I gotta move this. There we go. So here's another quote. In Montessori education, the child commonly learns to write before he reads. The child has less difficulty constructing a word that he is analyzing and thinking of than reading, because reading has an additional dimension of difficulty. It is a synthesis of sounds in a word that are in the mind of someone else. Oops, there we go. Nope,
Not moving.
there we
we
are.
go.
So here are some activities that we do with infants and toddlers that look fun, look silly, but are absolutely critical to helping children learn to write. That's because all of these activities strengthen the muscles in children's hand. They put children's hand in the correct position to hold a pencil, known as a pincer grip. They help children develop hand-eye coordination, right? You can't write if you can't write well if you're unable to sort of quote unquote stay in the lines, right? And so this all helps children control that movement and develop their muscles.
All right. And, again, I'll go back to formal writing assumes that a child knows the name, shape, and sound of that letter and the fine motor and spatial skills to put that on paper. So that's a very challenging task that a lot of us take for granted. It's not just, oh, I'm just going to start writing letters. Like, you have to have that spatial skills, the motor skills, the visual skills. So writing is a very impressive task. And because of that, any type of writing should be celebrated. So your 2-year-old comes home and says, like, this is a dog, and it scribbles, and you're like, it is a dog. You drew a dog. Something I learned a long time ago as a teacher is when someone brings me something and says, look what I did. The first thing you need to say is, oh, tell me about it. What is that? Because I've seen faces drop, usually when I was young, when it was a younger teacher, and I'd say, wow, you drew a nice tree. And they're like, oh,
That's my mom.
that's my mom. Yeah. So just, and celebrating every part of their development. So you can see here on the right that these are the common stages you might see. You can think about where your child might be on here. Just really quickly at the top, you might just see pictures. They might not even be that accurate. Those are pretty good trees. But they might just draw pictures and say, this is from my mom. A lot of you will see a lot of this is going on in my classroom at the beginning of the year, approximations, little doodles that look like O's and squiggles, random letters or strings of letters, just writing the same, maybe their letters in their name over and over again, random to initial sounds. So they might be thinking, oh, like I know my mom starts with an M, so I'm going to write M and say this is from my mom. Consonants, beginning and ending sounds, vowel sounds. At the end here, this is not typically where we get in our program, or never. But you can see how it kind of refines itself over time. And here are just a couple examples of early childhood writing. You'll see on the left, we do in our program, if we have children who are writing and sounding out words and they're at that point, we use what we call invented spelling. So that's using heard sounds. So every sound that they hear is what they write down. So I think, oh my goodness, I knew when I put it out here. It says once upon a time there was an something elephant and he made friends, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
And you can see if you're looking close, it does say elephant phonetically. That child was looking at a book as reference, which is wonderful for children when they don't know a word. Let's see if we can find what that word looks like. I encourage them to sound it out, but this child was like, I know this is about elephants, so I'm going to copy it. This wasn't like a 5-year-old. The second page was a sign-up sheet and it said, what do you think something is that will float? And I like this because it has lots of different types of writing. We have at the top, a boot. Think a boat. A boot floats. We have a string of letters. An empty lunchbox. Look at that. A basketball, floaties. You can see all the little E's. That's my favorite thing about writing, all the lines on the E's. Another floaties, but with some lowercase letters. And then 2 of our younger children, I'm assuming at the bottom, who made their mark too. That is writing. And then we see on the right, we have a young student who is doing some 3-letter phonetic decoding. So yeah, that's it. Oh wow, we're at the end already.
Whoa.
Okay, so we are at the end already. Yeah.
You have a question in the chat.
Yes.
about bilingual language. For kids exposed to two languages, should reading, writing be focused on one language first, or try to do the same exercises in both languages? And I think the
Sure.
answer is that you should be, I think both languages are good to
Mhm.
be able to go to
Yeah.
both at the same time.
I think the only time I agree. Correct,
Yeah.
disagree with you. I think as much as possible, doing it simultaneously is great. The only time we recommend choosing one is if we see a delay in children, but typically that's much later than right now, right? If a child who is not speaking either, let's say French or English, we may say, hey, let's hold off on one to see if we can get more from, more expressive language in one dominant language. But
Yeah, and I would add to that too, that occasionally we'll have families where they speak it's a family who
Right.
speaks French at home, and they're like, they don't really want to speak English at home. That's fine. That's what we're doing here
Right.
at school.
Right.
So if you can speak French at home, we'll speak English at school, and we can keep it separate that way. Again, if there is delay, we might recommend something like books on tape.
Right.
Like a lot of parents don't like their parents speaking to them in English. And so in that case too, ask your teachers. But I think if someone asked me, I would recommend then just speak what's comfortable at home,
absolutely.
and we'll work on it at school, and it'll all usually almost always
Yeah.
will level itself out. Any more questions? Oh,
We were just that good. We covered it all.
I actually have a question.
yes.
I'm not on video because I just had a baby, so we're in. I'm
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
to be perfectly honest. But what my son is in the Oak classroom, and what questions would you recommend we ask our teachers at the parent teacher conferences to kind of help us know where our child is on this sort of spectrum? Is it just that question, or are there other things that we should either ask the child, or how do we sort of reinforce this and help them at home?
I mean, I think asking, where they are in their literacy development is a very valid question, and the teachers would, I'm sure, be able to answer that question, answer the question for you. I think if you're seeing anything at home, not knowing you or your child, maybe if they're resistant to reading books, or maybe they're really into reading books, or maybe they're starting to show like, oh, that says dog, or I see that's a D. Maybe you could explain. I always find it's helpful for me as a teacher if you explain what you're seeing at home and just say, so what are they doing in the classroom, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And they should be able to help you from there, and give you some ideas of what to do at home.
Great. Yeah, it's really interesting to see all of how many different foundational elements there are.
Yeah.
You just don't realize how much of this is all interconnected, and how they did mention at the visit curriculum night about how the kids are memorizing the books and how that's such an important stage towards this. So thank you for elucidating all of this and helping us understand that all of these different elements can help them build a love of reading.
Yeah, I'll also say, just because you brought up and you reminded us all, how many steps there are and how many foundational steps that, to get to reading and writing. Think about all the ways that it could go wrong, and therefore why some children have a hard time learning to read, and why it often will take children till they're 5, 6, or 7 to really get it, because it just takes one little misstep or one part of the brain that's not processing perfectly in that moment for a child to have a hard time. And so I think remembering that and taking a deep breath and taking a step back and saying, okay, let's figure out where is my child missing something, and how do I go back and fill that in?
And I would also add to that, and thank you for bringing up conferences, because something we hear a lot as children who are learning their letters, a lot of letters look the same.
Mhm.
And honestly, until around 7 years
Yeah.
old, they might just not be able to see that a letter is different. A lot of people be like, they say they're B's or P's and they're D's or Q's. And I'm like, that's so normal. Something you can do is sort of isolate that and point it out, like, to them like, this is a B, this is a D, and these are the differences. But just visually, they might not be able to see it like at all.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just patience and trusting the process.
Yeah.
Can you just give a quick example with the phonics of the letters? Like, when you say B and D, I've been trying not to actually say the names of the symbols because I know that
Right.
phonics is so
Yes,
important. So
agreed.
would you in the Montessori classroom be saying like, "buh," and I don't know, I have to look up all of them.
Yeah, so when we teach the like letters in isolation, we often use the sandpaper letters. And so it's this just the symbol on like with sandpaper.
Right.
The symbol, and we would say this is B. Try not
Got
to
it.
put as
Okay.
many us on it, like g, j, like try, it's hard. But
Right.
you know, this is b, this is d. But you find it more when they start to like write as well, that things will be backwards or upside down, or and like it's visual. And it's not visual because there's any delay, it's developmentally like that. Some 3-year-olds will see it correctly forever, and some 5-year-olds will struggle with it, and that's all in the range of age appropriate.
Thank you so much. This is really helpful.
Good. Anybody else?
I was wondering about, my child is currently receiving speech and language therapy only once a week because it's really hard to get her to the appointments after work. And so I'm wondering, like, how can I continue to collaborate what I'm learning from the speech therapist, implementing at home into the classroom as well?
Yeah, I would say definitely, right, that's a good question. A lot of it depends on the age of your child, but that's a great use of the conferences, right? Say, either, I mean, there are a few strategies. You can see if there's a therapist who is available during the day, and at least here, and I know at the other 2 campuses as well, have therapists come into the classroom to do that. So maybe she can get, or your child can have either more service, more time, and then it sort of takes a little stress off of you as well. You don't have to try to rush them where they need to be. But then there's this natural collaboration between the service provider and the teachers. But definitely, I would bring it up at your conference and say, this is what I know the therapist is working on. How can we help you help them do some of the same work in the classroom?
And I know as a teacher, I've spoken to lots of therapists, speech, OT, and they want to get more information from me, and I can also get more information from them and like implement it. So if the therapists are open to speaking with the teachers directly, that's also something that I found to be really helpful.
Okay, thank you so much. That's a really great idea. I didn't think about that. And then who do I follow up in terms of like in the school, the speech and language? Do you guys have a speech and language therapist?
We don't. I would say Susan, my
Susan,
first,
no.
either get in touch with Susan or getting in touch with Dr. Ann Colantoni. She may be able to help facilitate.
Yeah, we had a speaker the past couple years who we can refer you to. I can send you a little note about that, and who might be able to help during the day.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
I can also give you the recording of the talk that she gave last year. That might be helpful too.
Yes, I would appreciate it.
The other thing I would add, just as a daily practice, and then would be daily reading, just making sure that daily reading is part of your routines, because when you start when they're very young, it becomes part of your bedtime routine, which is very pleasant. And it's one-on-one time that you have with your child. And it's also a great way for exposure to literature, and it grows into a lifelong habit. So that's the other thing I would add.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, actually. We started reading with our kids, when they were like
In utero.
few months old. Well, yeah, they were listening to stories during circle time when they were babies. But my husband, because I read all day, often does the afternoon, the evening, the bedtime reading. And he still reads with my 8-year-old every night. And it's always kind of nice if you can read something a little above their level sometimes, their reading level. That way they can be exposed to a lot of that new vocabulary. you know, without having to have the stress of reading it. Now that's for like a little bit older kids, but I would say even when they get to elementary school, keep doing it because it's great for bonding, but B, like my son still looks forward to it every day as like an almost 9-year-old.
Well, this is great. Thank you so much for taking the time out, both the parents for being here and also to our teachers. I really appreciate all the work that you're doing, and this is a great presentation. So thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Thank you.